A quiet welcome, safe as candlelight. Frost whispers outside, wood smoke drifts within, breath slows, sinking into softness. The day releases its weight, the night gathers you close. Stay, rest, maybe follow the glow. The hearth flickers once, then fades, unfinished. You stand at the edge of a winter morning, where the fields stretch wide and white, silent under a thin cover of frost. The earth is not dead, though it seems so at first glance. It is merely resting, retreating inward, holding its breath until spring dares to return. Above you, the sky hangs low, the color of ash, carrying no promise of warmth. The first thing you notice is the quiet. In summer, the fields sang, buzzing with bees, whispering with grain. But now, the sound is different. The only voice is the crunch beneath your feet, each step pressing ice crystals into the mud. This sound, sharp yet soft, becomes the heartbeat of the landscape. It is slow, steady, almost hypnotic. You follow it without hurry, letting it carry you deeper into the rhythm of winter. You imagine the peasants who once walked these same fields, their lives bound to the cycle of the soil. Their mornings began not with clocks, but with the pale light that seeped over the horizon. Frost bit at their fingers, stiffened their joints, and yet they moved because they had to. To pause too, long was to invite hunger. You see them in your mind's eye, bent figures wrapped in rough wool, pulling what little might remain from the ground, gathering fuel, tending to the animals that gave warmth in their own way. Survival was not dramatic here. It was quiet, relentless, and constant. As you breathe in, the air stings slightly in your chest. Cold air is heavier, denser than the warm breezes of summer. Science tells us this happens because molecules move more slowly in the cold, drawing closer together, pressing the air into something sharper, something that bites at the lungs. You can feel this with every breath, but instead of fighting it, you let it guide you into slowness. Your body adjusts, your rhythm settles. The cold does not chase you away, it anchors you here. You let your mind drift back to the soil itself. Beneath the frozen surface, an entire world sleeps. Seeds lie dormant, patient, awaiting the subtle cues of temperature and light that will call them to stir again. Earthworms curl into the deeper layers of soil, insulated from the freeze, carrying with them the memory of movement. Even in stillness, there is preparation. Even in silence, there is the faint murmur of life waiting to unfold. The peasants may not have known the scientific words, but they felt this truth. They saw how the frost preserved, how it paused decay. A carrot left in the earth beneath a layer of snow might keep longer than one pulled too soon. Cold was harsh, yes, but it also slowed the world in ways that could be useful. It forced a rhythm of patience, and patience here was survival. Your footsteps carry you further along the edge of the field. You notice the way frost paints every blade of grass, each crystal a tiny prism, catching what little light seeps through the clouds. If you kneel closer, you see the delicate geometry, stars and spires, lacy webs spun from nothing but water and cold. The science of frost is simple. Water vapor in the air settles onto surfaces, freezing instantly into patterns shaped by temperature and humidity. But to the eye, it is art. A frozen cathedral spread across the smallest of leaves. You could lose yourself in these details, in their fragile permanence, knowing they will vanish with the first touch of sun. In the distance, you hear the creak of a wooden cart, the muffled lowing of cattle. Sound travels differently in the cold. The molecules of air, pressed tighter together, carry vibrations more efficiently. Voices seem sharper, footsteps more pronounced, as if the land itself is leaning in to listen. That is why a winter morning feels so hushed. Each sound stands apart, clear and distinct, surrounded by wide silence. You feel as though you too must lower your voice, speak only in whispers to honor the stillness. You imagine again the peasants gathering at dawn, breath rising in faint clouds. Their lives were measured by survival. But within that survival were moments of quiet awe, like watching frost bloom across the thatch of their cottages, or seeing the faint shimmer of stars that winter reveals with sharper clarity. To live, then, was to notice, because noticing was the difference between enough and not enough. The rhythm of nature was both teacher and master. You pause, feeling the weight of the air, the vastness of the fields. Winter teaches slowness, and slowness teaches depth. In modern life, so much rushes past. But here, in this frost-bound world, nothing hurries. Even hunger must wait. Even the earth must rest. You let yourself sink into that lesson, letting time stretch, letting the horizon widen. Somewhere at the edges of the village, smoke rises from a hearth, a ribbon of grey winding into the pale sky. It carries the scent of burning wood, a reminder that even in scarcity, there is warmth. You follow that smoke with your eyes, imagining the families huddled inside, shaking the cold from their hands. Their world was not easy, but it was grounded. Each act, chopping wood, gathering grain, tending animals, was a tether to life itself. There was no abstraction, no distance from necessity. In every breath of frost, they understood the weight of survival and the quiet beauty hidden within it. You let the image linger, the wide field, the bent figures, the hush of air, the frost gleaming faintly against the sky. Slowly, the horizon begins to dissolve into mist, the edges blurring, the field fading. The silence deepens, wrapping around you like a cloak. And as it does, you feel the pull toward the next step, the next space in this winter journey. Because beyond the frost, beyond the field, there waits the shelter of a roof, the low hum of life beneath thatch and timber. You can almost hear it, calling, a soft murmur of warmth through the cold, unfinished, waiting, just beyond. You step through a low doorway, bent slightly so your head does not brush the timber above. The thatched roof dips close, and the air changes at once. Outside, there was frost, space, silence. Inside, there is closeness. The warmth is not sharp, not bright, but muted, woven together from many small sources. The smolder of a fire, the breath of people, the slow exhale of animals who share this space. It is one room, and one room is enough. The walls lean inward, coated in smoke and soot. The scent is strong, a mixture of burning wood, damp wool, and straw. You breathe it in, and though it clings to you, it also reassures. It tells you this place is lived in. This place is survival. Your eyes adjust to the dimness. The fire does not blaze. Wood is too precious for that. Instead, a few glowing embers settle into a rhythm, glowing red, fading, then flaring again with each breath of the draft. Around it, life gathers. A family presses close, wrapped in layers of rough spun cloth. Beside them, goats or a cow shift gently, their bodies giving off a steady warmth. This arrangement was not unusual. Animals and people shared walls, sometimes even the same floor, because warmth could not be wasted. The heat of a living body was a gift, and gifts could not be turned away. You notice how the space itself is built for endurance. The roof, low and sloped, is thatched with bundles of straw, layered thick enough to turn away the rain. Science tells us that thatch, though humble, is remarkably efficient. The tightly packed stems trap air, creating a natural insulation. Each stalk acts like a miniature hollow tube, holding warmth in and cold out. And so, without knowing the chemistry of insulation, these people built homes that held steady through winters year after year. The floor beneath you is packed earth, uneven, with straw scattered across it. Straw softens the step, but it also absorbs spills and waste. It must be changed often, yet it is plentiful, pulled from the harvest fields, the same stalks that once waved golden under the summer sun. Even here, in this low room, the memory of summer lingers in the straw beneath your feet. The family gathers near the hearth. A pot hangs above the coals, the faint smell of broth rising into the smoky air. It is thin, made from scraps, but even a thin broth brings life. You imagine the taste of it. Warm, salty, a hint of root vegetables softened into the liquid. Food here is not measured in luxury, but in endurance. Each sip is enough to stretch the body through another day. Each bite is fuel for work that cannot stop. The children curl against their mother's side, their hair tangled, their cheeks flushed from the firelight. Their laughter is soft, hushed, almost wary of the silence beyond the walls. In the corner, the father mends a tool by the dim light, iron striking faintly, wood bending under calloused hands. Work does not stop when the sun fades. In this one-room dwelling, every moment is filled with purpose. Yet beneath the purpose, there is a strange calm. Life here is not scattered across many tasks, many places, but held close under one roof. Every heartbeat is shared. You let your gaze drift upward. The beams of the roof are thick with soot, years of smoke layering into blackness. From these beams hang bundles of herbs, drying slowly in the warmth. Thyme, sage, sometimes garlic. Their scent mingles with the smoke, a sharpness that cuts through the heaviness of the air. These herbs are not only for flavor, but for medicine, for warding illness in the cold months when disease spreads quickly in crowded rooms. The science of it was not yet written, but through trial, error, and memory, these people learned which plants soothed the body, which leaves eased breathing, which roots might calm a fever. Knowledge passed down not in books, but in whispers, in practice, in survival. The flicker of the fire throws shadows along the wall. They stretch long, bend, then disappear. The play of light is slow, almost dreamlike. You think of how light itself behaves, waves and particles moving through space, scattered by smoke, softened into glow. Here, inside this low thatched roof, the science of light is not an abstraction. It is a presence, alive in every shifting shape that drifts across the timber. You listen. The sounds of this room are steady. The crackle of embers, the murmur of voices, the rustle of straw as animals shift in their sleep. The rhythm is simple, but soothing. Noise outside is muffled by thatch and timber. The room itself becomes a cocoon, a small universe where every sound has meaning, every silence has weight. In the far corner, a child stirs and pulls a wool blanket tighter. Wool, rough to the touch, heavy, slightly scratchy against the skin. Yet wool holds warmth even when damp. It resists water, clings to heat, and so becomes a shield in the endless cold. Each blanket is not just cloth, but hours of labor, the shearing of sheep, the spinning of fibers, the weaving of threads. Every piece of fabric is a record of hands at work. You can feel the weight of that effort, folded around the child like a second skin. You reflect on how the science of heat plays out here, invisible but constant. Heat does not simply vanish. It transfers, moves, settles. It radiates from the fire, absorbed by walls, by straw, by bodies huddled together. The animals breathe, exhaling warmth that rises into the room. Every source is small, but together they make survival possible. The family may not name it thermodynamics, but they live by its laws, night after night, winter after winter. Time passes slowly in this space. The fire burns low, shadows stretch longer, then fade. Outside, frost thickens, coating the fields in silence. Inside, breath mingles, warmth gathers. Stories are told in whispers. The roof above holds it all together. The smoke, the heat, the life. A roof that is more than shelter. It is the line between endurance and collapse, between survival and loss. You let your body sink into the rhythm of this room, the closeness, the stillness, the low hum of shared breath. You can feel the pulse of life, not as individuals, but as a single gathered presence. Each sound, each scent, each flicker of light belongs to the same moment, held together beneath the low thatched roof. Slowly, your gaze drifts back to the door, to the frost waiting beyond. You know the family will step back into it at dawn, bending again to the work of the fields. But for now, here, they rest, and you rest with them. The fire flickers low, shadows soften, silence gathers. You feel the pull of sleep, the hush of stillness pressing close. Beyond these walls, the winter deepens. But inside, life endures, folded into warmth, held close, unfinished. You find yourself seated near the small fire, where the single pot of the household hangs low above glowing embers. The air is heavy with smoke, with wool, with straw, but another scent lingers now, something gentler, something carrying the promise of sustenance. It is the smell of bread and broth, bread coarse and dark, made not from pure white flour, but from rye and barley, ground in the village mill and kneaded by tired hands. The crust is thick, almost bitter, but the body is dense and filling. This is not a luxury. This is the foundation of life. For peasants across medieval Europe, bread was not just food, it was survival itself. A single loaf could carry a family. Through a day of labor, each slice torn and shared, each crumb gathered with care. Beside it, the pot simmers slowly, never in a rush. It bubbles with turnips, onions, maybe a carrot if the season has been kind. Meat is rare, often absent. Instead, the broth leans on what the garden and the earth have given, roots pulled from frozen soil, greens dried and stored from months before. The rhythm of the pot is steady, a bubbling that speaks not of indulgence, but of endurance. You lean closer. Steam rises, curling into the dim corners of the room. Each wisp carries warmth, moisture, life. Science tells us that steam is simply water molecules lifted into the air, shaken free by heat. But here, in this one-room home, steam feels like something greater. It fills the air, softens the breath, eases the ache of winter. It is warmth that can be inhaled, a promise that the body is not alone against the cold. The family gathers around, the low table. The bread is torn, not cut. Knives are too precious for careless slicing, and besides, tearing shares more intimately. Each hand takes a piece, dipping it into the broth, soaking the dryness into softness. The broth clings to the bread, carries flavor into every bite. You taste it in your imagination. Earthy, salty, faintly sweet, with root vegetables softened by long simmering. It is thin, yes, but it is filling enough. Food here is not measured by pleasure, but by necessity. Calories, though the word was not known, meant survival. The dense bread brought carbohydrates for energy. The broth carried trace minerals from the soil. The occasional bean or pea added protein. The fat from a scrap of bone gave warmth to the body. Each element, however small, played its part. You begin to see the science hidden inside tradition. The balance of nutrients discovered not in textbooks, but through centuries of hunger and endurance. The rhythm of eating is slow, careful. No morsel is wasted. Crumbs are gathered. Broth is scraped with the last piece of bread. Even the bones left after boiling are not discarded, but dried, crushed, used for flavor or for the dogs that guard the home. Waste is a luxury no one can afford. Every scrap is folded back into the cycle of life. You notice the way the room changes during this meal. The silence of the fields gives way to low voices, to the small hum of togetherness. Eating is not only survival, it is community. The hearth draws them in, binding family, sometimes neighbors, sometimes strangers, into the same circle of warmth. To share food is to share life itself. The science of warmth plays out again here. As you sip from the steaming broth, heat moves through you, spreading slowly. The warm liquid raises the body's temperature, encourages circulation. loosens stiff muscles, your breath deepens, your shoulders sink. You feel the same quiet relief that a medieval peasant would have felt at the end of a long day. The sense that, for this moment at least, you are safe, you are fed, you are still alive. You pause to think of bread more closely. Grain was everything. The cycles of sowing, growing, and harvesting wheat or rye bound the entire rhythm of medieval life. Too much rain and the crop rotted. Too little and it withered. A single failed harvest meant hunger. 2 in a row meant famine. Bread became a symbol of life itself. It was prayed over in churches, blessed at feasts, broken at every table. To break bread was to share existence, to extend survival. The crust you imagine in your hand tells its own story. Dark bread for peasants, lighter bread for nobles. The refinement of flour separated classes as sharply as land or coin. And yet, in the depths of winter, both noble and peasant alike leaned on grain. The field did not discriminate. Hunger belonged to everyone. You take another imagined bite, feeling the weight of it, the way it lingers in your body. Bread fills slowly, pressing hunger away, calming the stomach, settling the mind. Scientists today call it the glycemic effect, the gradual release of energy from dense starches. But here, it is simply the feeling of being able to keep working, to endure another day. The broth, too, holds hidden science. As vegetables simmer, their fibers soften, their nutrients slip into the liquid. A medieval cook may not have spoken of vitamins or minerals, but she knew, instinctively, that broth restored strength to the weak. It eased fevers, warmed chilled bodies, revived the weary. It was medicine disguised as food, discovered through observation and tradition, passed down like a quiet inheritance. Around you, the family eats with slow reverence. The father dips his bread, chewing steadily, while the mother lifts a child's spoon to her lips to cool it before passing it on. The children giggle, dipping their crusts, steam fogging their cheeks. Even the animals seem to lean closer, their warmth a part of the circle, their quiet chewing a rhythm of its own. This moment is simple, but it carries weight. To eat together, to share warmth and nourishment, is to remind the body and spirit that survival is possible. Tomorrow the work will begin again. Tomorrow the fields will demand their labor, but tonight, in this dim room, the family gathers around bread and broth, and it is enough. You let yourself linger on the final image, the pot steaming gently, the bread torn in careful hands, the silence softened by breath and by warmth. The meal is not a feast, but it is a kind of prayer, a slow, steady assurance that life continues. Steam curls upward, vanishing into the rafters. The last crust is dipped, the last sip taken. The pot hangs empty now, glowing faintly in the firelight. The smell lingers, woven into the smoke, into the walls, into memory. And beyond the door, the frost still waits. Tomorrow, footsteps will crunch across frozen paths once more, unfinished, already calling you toward the next chapter. You step away from the warmth of the hearth, out into the pale morning where the frost clings to every surface. The doorway closes behind you, and at once the air sharpens, pressing into your lungs with each breath. The world is quiet here. No birds, no rustling leaves, no hum of insects, only silence, vast and unbroken, stretched across the frozen earth. The path before you is narrow, barely more than a track worn by countless feet. Now it glitters faintly, glazed with ice where night's frost has lingered. Each step you take presses into it with a soft, deliberate crunch. The sound repeats, steady, hypnotic, as if marking the rhythm of the morning. Step after step, breath after breath, you feel the cold seep up through the soles of your boots, rising into your bones, urging you forward. The air carries your breath in visible clouds. Each exhale drifts upward like smoke, dissolving slowly into the still sky. You notice how the cold makes the invisible visible. Normally, breath passes unnoticed, a quiet exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide with the world around you. But now, in winter's stillness, the science reveals itself. The warm moisture from your lungs meets the chill of the air and condenses, instantly, forming tiny droplets that float like ghosts. You see proof of your own life in every cloud that fades into silence. Ahead, the figure of a peasant bends against the cold, shoulders wrapped in wool, steps heavy with the weight of labor. They carry a wooden bucket, its handle worn smooth by years of use. The task is simple, to fetch water from the stream. Yet simplicity does not mean ease. The stream lies half a mile away, and the cold turns each step into a test of endurance. You walk alongside in silence, listening to the rhythm of boots against ice. Crunch, pause, breath. Crunch, pause, breath. It becomes a meditation, a slow alignment between body and earth. In this frozen world, rushing would only bring danger. A slip, a fall, a broken limb, such things could mean disaster for a family in winter. So each movement is careful, deliberate, steady. Survival lives in slowness. As you follow the path, you notice the frost painting everything it touches. Fence posts are crowned with crystals, each one a fragile spire catching what little light filters through the sky. Twigs glisten as though dipped in glass. Even the smallest weeds, pressed flat against the earth, shimmer with white lace. Frost, so delicate yet so thorough, transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Science tells us frost forms when surfaces cool below the dew point, causing water vapor to freeze directly into solid crystals. But here, in this moment, science feels like poetry. The invisible becomes visible, the fleeting becomes permanent, if only for a few hours. You walk through a gallery of frozen art, knowing it will all vanish at the sun's first touch. The stream comes into view, winding dark and narrow through the fields. Its surface is rimmed with ice, thin sheets gathering at the edges, but at the center, the water still flows. You can hear it before you see it. The faint gurgle, softened by the cold, muffled beneath the weight of still air. Water moves even when the world seems frozen, carrying its quiet persistence from season to season. The peasant kneels by the bank, breaking the thin crust of ice with a stick. The sound is sharp, like glass shattering, echoing in the silence. Ripples spread outward, widening circles that distort the mirrored sky above. You watch them fade, vanishing back into stillness, leaving only the dark, cold water behind. Water is life, and in winter, it is also labor. The bucket lowers, fills, rises again, heavy and unwieldy. A gallon of water weighs more than 8 pounds, and this bucket holds several. The load presses into shoulders, strains the arms, slows the pace of the walk home. Yet without it, there can be no broth, no bread, no warmth in the hearth. Each drop is essential. Each trip is survival. You crouch near the edge, dipping your fingers into the water. The cold is immediate, biting, almost painful. Within seconds, your skin aches, your muscles stiffen. This is the body's reaction to cold immersion. Blood vessels constrict, slowing circulation to preserve the core's warmth. If you were to linger too long, numbness would spread, strength would falter, but you withdraw quickly, shaking droplets into the frosty air. The ripples fade again, unfinished, silent. Standing once more, you look across the fields. The horizon is pale, blurred by mist. Somewhere in the distance, another figure walks, bent against the same cold. The rhythm of their steps blends with yours, forming a quiet chorus of survival across the land. Each path, though separate, is joined by the same necessity: water, warmth, life. The return journey begins. The bucket sways, water sloshes, small drops spilling onto the frozen ground. Each spill freezes almost instantly, leaving tiny shards of glass along the path. The science of phase change plays out before your eyes. Liquid to solid, fluid to crystal, motion to stillness. What feels like loss, the spilling of water, is also transformation, a quiet lesson written into the earth itself. Step after step, breath after breath, you return toward the glow of the village, where smoke rises, faintly into the pale air. The body aches, the arms burn from the weight of the bucket, but still the feet move forward. There is no choice. The rhythm of necessity carries you onward. As the cottage roofs come into view, you notice again the sound of your steps, the crunch of frost beneath your boots. What began as harsh now feels almost comforting. It is the sound of presence, of progress, of persistence. Each crunch is proof that you are still here, still moving, still alive in the frozen world. You pause once more at the threshold of the home, hearing the muffled sounds of the hearth inside, the crackle of fire, the murmur of voices. The door opens, warmth spills out, and the weight of the bucket finally rests on the floor. The path is behind you, but its rhythm lingers still, etched into your breath, into your bones. Outside, the stream flows on, carrying ripples into the distance, vanishing into the cold. Tomorrow, the path will wait again, glazed with frost, ready for the same slow, steady steps. The silence will stretch wide, and the breath will rise in clouds, and the water will ripple, fade, and vanish once more, unfinished, waiting for your return. You step out once more, into a world that is quieter than quiet. Snow is falling, slowly, endlessly, each flake drifting, as though time itself has slowed to watch. The sky is a pale blur, the horizon erased. The earth is softened beneath its white covering, muffling every sound except the steady rhythm of your breath. Ahead, the steeple rises above the cottages, sharp and tall, its spire pointing into the grey heavens. Frost clings to its edges, and the bell within waits, silent. You walk toward it, boots pressing into the snow with a hollow crunch, each step leaving a print that begins to fill even as you move forward. The village seems hushed, as if listening for something unseen. Then it comes, a low, resonant tone, carrying across the whitened fields. The church bell tolls. Its sound is deep, steady, and slow, vibrating not only in your ears, but also in your chest, as though the very air itself has learned to hum. Each strike lingers, overlapping with the next, until the sound becomes a river of resonance, flowing outward into the winter silence. The science of bells is the science of resonance. A great bronze shape, heavy and still, comes alive when struck. Vibrations ripple through the metal, each frequency weaving together into a sound that is fuller than the sum of its parts. Those waves spill into the air, carried on invisible currents, traveling farther in winter's stillness than in the warmer months. Cold air, dense and heavy, carries sound more efficiently. This is why the bell seems to echo from everywhere, at once, reaching ears miles away, carried by the brittle wind. You imagine the villagers in their cottages, pausing as the tone arrives. Mothers hush children. Farmers rest hands on worn tools. The bell is more than a sound. It is a summons, a reminder of rhythm in a life dictated by seasons and survival. You follow others along the path, cloaks pulled tight against the cold. Snowflakes land on shoulders, melt against warmth, then vanish into damp patches of wool. Faces are lowered, breath rising in clouds. Yet there is comfort in the company, in knowing that everyone walks the same direction, pulled by the same call. The church itself is modest, built of timber and stone, walls thick against the wind. Its roof is weighted with snow, but the doors stand open, letting out the faint scent of burning tallow and beeswax. Inside, the air is warmer than outside, but only just. Candles flicker along the walls, their light soft, wavering and golden. Shadows stretch upward, climbing the beams like climbing vines. The villagers gather in silence, filling the benches, shoulders pressed together for warmth. Cloaks are pulled close, gloves removed, hands rubbed against one another. You join them, feeling the body of the community settle into place. like stones arranged in a careful circle. The bell's echoes fade, leaving behind a lingering hush. Snow still falls outside, but here, inside these walls, time seems suspended. Words begin softly, prayers murmured in unison, not loud but steady, like a tide washing in and out. The rhythm is familiar, almost hypnotic, whether you believe or not. The sound of collective voices is soothing, like a lullaby sung by many at once. Science tells us that when people speak or sing together, their heartbeats can begin to synchronize. Breathing too falls into rhythm. The villagers, gathered close, find a shared pace in their murmurings. What begins as many voices becomes almost one, a single body of sound rising, falling, flowing. In the dim light, you feel that rhythm reach you, wrapping around your own breath, guiding it into slowness, into steadiness. You glance upward, toward the beams where candlelight trembles. Smoke from the tapers curls upward, finding the cold, cracks above. You follow it with your eyes, imagining how it escapes into the snowy air. Even here, in a place of walls and stillness, movement never ceases. Heat rises, air circulates, snow falls, time flows. Stillness is never truly still. The prayers continue, mingling with the soft creak of wood, the muffled sound of snow pressing against the roof. Outside, flakes drift endlessly downward, forming layers upon layers. Each flake is unique in structure, though to the naked eye they look the same. Science has shown that snowflakes form when water vapor freezes around a nucleus, a speck of dust, a grain of pollen. Temperature and humidity guide the shape, building delicate crystals in patterns so intricate they seem like nature's handwriting. As the villagers pray, thousands of these silent miracles land upon the roof, unnoticed, infinite. A final word is spoken, and silence settles again. The congregation rises, slowly, stretching stiff limbs, adjusting cloaks. Some linger, warming hands near the candles. Others exchange soft whispers. Outside, the bell rings once more, not as a summons, but as a release. The sound echoes outward, again, washing across the white fields, then fading into the quiet air. You step outside with them. Snow greets you, drifting thicker now, each flake larger, slower, gentler. The sky is darker, the light thinning into late afternoon. Villagers walk together, footsteps pressed into fresh snow, paths winding back toward hearths and fields. There, voices rise in soft conversation, laughter here and there, breath steaming like small fires in the cold. You pause, turning back toward the steeple. It rises through the snowfall, tall and silent once more. The bell is still now, yet its sound lingers within you like an afterimage behind closed eyes. Bells are like memory. They strike, they fade, but their resonance carries long after the vibration ends. You walk on, feeling the hush of snow around you. Each flake that lands on your skin melts instantly, vanishing into warmth. Each step crunches, softly, muted, fading behind you. The path leads home again, where a fire waits, where broth simmers, where shadows stretch across walls. Behind you, the steeple stands, its bell resting in silence, its voice waiting for another day. Ahead of you, the snow deepens, the world whitening into stillness. Breath by breath, step by step, you move forward, carrying the echo within you, an echo that fades not into silence, but into the quiet promise of what comes next. Snow falls, thicker, covering the prints already fading behind you. The bell's echo softens into memory. The path ahead glimmers pale, unfinished. Somewhere beyond, another rhythm waits. The sound of labor, of field and hand, of winter's endless work. You wake to a sky the color of ash, the morning dim, yet edged with silver. The air is sharp, biting against your lungs, each breath a reminder of the cold. Inside the cottage, the fire has burned low. Only embers remain, glowing faintly like watchful eyes in the dark. The family stirs, rubbing hands together, wrapping cloaks tighter. It is time to gather more fuel, for the night ahead will demand it. Outside, the world lies frozen. Frost webs across the fields, glittering in weak light, each blade of grass stiff with ice. You step into the stillness, the snow crunching beneath your boots. The path to the forest is narrow, carved by footsteps over many days, winding into the waiting trees. The forest greets you with silence, broken only by the occasional call of a crow. Pines stand tall, their branches heavy with snow, needles dusted, white. Beneath them, the ground is uneven, scattered with twigs and fallen branches. The air smells of resin and earth, sharp and grounding. You raise the axe, grip firm, breath clouding in the cold. The first strike rings out, metal on wood, iron against life. The sound echoes through the trees, startling a flurry of birds into the air. The vibration runs down your arms, jarring your bones. Again and again, you swing. Each strike is rhythm, each rhythm survival. The science of chopping wood lies in force and persistence. The axe head is shaped to split fibers apart, a wedge driving into the grain. With each swing, energy transfers from muscle to metal, from metal to tree. The fibers weaken, crack, separate. The sound shifts, hollow, then sharp, then breaking, until at last the trunk leans, groans, and falls with a heavy sigh. Snow flurries upward, a pale breath released. You pause, chest rising and falling, steam curling from your lips. Around you, the forest returns to stillness, as though waiting patiently. You kneel to trim branches, stacking them neatly, hands stiff and raw from cold. Sap coats your gloves, sticky and fragrant, a reminder that even in deep winter, life flows inside these trunks. The resin protects, sealing wounds, keeping the tree alive through freezing nights. Others work beside you. The sound of axes punctuates the air, each strike staggered but steady, weaving together like a kind of music. The rhythm becomes hypnotic. Swing, strike, echo, pause. Voices rise occasionally, laughter carried on frosty air, a brief warmth against the cold labor. As logs pile higher, you notice your hands. Blisters swell beneath the skin, sore and red. The body adapts to effort, but not without cost. Muscles burn, joints ache, skin thickens over time. Calluses form, a slow armor against repeated strain. This is the biology of survival. To endure, to toughen, to change in small ways that allow you to keep going. You rest, leaning on the axe, eyes drifting upward through the canopy. Above, branches weave against the pale sky, dark lace outlined in white. Snow clings precariously, dropping occasionally in soft cascades that land with muffled thumps. You tilt your head back and listen. Even silence here is not empty. It is filled with the faint creaks of frozen wood, the sigh of distant wind, the heartbeat of the forest slowed for winter. When enough wood is gathered, the work shifts to hauling. Logs are bound with rope, dragged. Across the snow, each pull heavy and grinding. The sled groans under the weight, runners scraping ice. Shoulders strain, boots dig deep. Progress is slow but steady, and with every step the pile grows closer to home. The science of energy reveals itself in every movement. Muscles contract, converting chemical fuel from food into power. Each calorie burned becomes motion, heat, sweat. Work is the body's transformation of bread and broth into survival. In these efforts, you feel the cycle. What was harvested, cooked, consumed, becomes now the strength that pulls wood across frozen ground. Back at the cottage, the logs are stacked carefully against the wall, ends facing outward to dry. The pattern matters. Air must flow between them, preventing rot, letting moisture escape. Each piece is both weight and promise. Warmth for nights, flames for cooking, light for darkness. You step back to see the pile grow, satisfaction blooming quietly in your chest. The day wears on. Shadows lengthen between the trees, the light thinning into grey. The forest deepens into dusk, and you sense the temperature dropping once again. Work slows, voices quiet, tools are gathered. The last logs are placed upon the sled, ropes coiled, axes sheathed. The group turns homeward, boots pressing new tracks over old ones, each step crunching in unison. The village greets you with faint smoke rising from chimneys, a sign of fires already lit. The air smells of wood burning, dry oak, sharp pine, earthy birch. Each type of tree offers its own voice in the fire, its own pattern of heat and flame. You think of this, of how even the fuel for survival carries its own character, its own story. Inside, the hearth is rekindled, flames leaping as fresh logs catch. Sparks rise, glowing briefly before vanishing into darkness. The fire roars, warmth spreading outward, light flickering across walls. Shadows dance again, softer now, more familiar. Around it, the family gathers, hands outstretched, palms glowing, red with heat. The ache in your body softens under the glow, fatigue settling like a blanket. Outside, the forest remains, vast and waiting, its silence unbroken by axes now. Trees stand tall, branches heavy, roots deep beneath frozen earth. The work of winter is never done. Tomorrow, and the day after, the rhythm will repeat. Chop, split, haul, burn. Survival is not a single act, but a cycle. Each day adds a piece to the stack. Each effort builds a flame against the cold. As you sit by the fire, watching embers crackle, you think of the forest, of snow falling silently on branches, of the hush that waits between each strike of the axe. The work is hard, but within it is something steady, something grounding, a rhythm that links you to the land, to the season, to the pulse of life itself, moving quietly beneath the frozen surface. The fire glows, logs crackling into sparks. The forest waits in stillness, holding its breath. Tomorrow's labor rests in silence tonight. And beyond the trees, another call begins. The voice of beasts and hooves in snow. The candle dies slowly, a wavering flame leaning sideways until it gutters out in silence. A thin thread of smoke rises, curling into the rafters, fading into the dark. For a moment, the glow lingers in your eyes, phantoms of light that pulse and vanish, leaving you with the vastness of shadow. The room exhales into stillness. Darkness has a weight. It presses gently on your eyelids, spills into corners, thickens against the beams above. Without the candle's flicker, the space feels both smaller and larger. The walls retreat, yet the unknown beyond them stretches wider. You adjust to it slowly, your pupils widening, drinking in every trace of dimness. Shapes emerge faintly. The outline of a bench, the low gleam of a metal pot, the pale square of frost on the shuttered window. This is night without light, as countless generations have known it. Once the tallow is gone, there is nothing to hold back the dark. No lantern, no lamp, only the soft glow of embers if you are lucky, or the gleam of moonlight if the clouds allow. Sight diminishes, yet other senses bloom. You hear the creak of beams above, the settling of wood as the house breathes in the cold. You hear the sigh of the wind pressing against thatch, carrying whispers from far across the fields. You hear the shifting of animals in the byre, their warmth muffled through walls. And beneath it all, the steady rhythm of your own breath. The quietest song, reminding you that you are here. Stories begin in the dark. Voices rise softly, cautious not to wake the youngest children. Words spoken into the space between blankets. Tales of saints and spirits, of wolves on the edge of the wood, of neighbors long gone but not forgotten. Some stories soothe, others warn, but all hold the same rhythm, a weaving of voices against silence. The imagination stretches where the eyes cannot, filling shadows with images, half comfort, half fear. The science of darkness is the science of perception. When light fades, your eyes search for what is left. Inside them, cells awaken, rods more sensitive than cones, attuned not to color but to faint traces of gray. You begin to see in outlines, in gradients, in whispers of form. The body adapts, shifting into night vision, granting you a different kind of sight, less sharp, more mysterious, but enough to move, enough to feel. And when vision falters, hearing sharpens. The brain leans into sound, amplifying every creak and whisper. Even the faintest noises, a drop of melting snow, the rustle of straw, the crack of settling timber, become vivid. You lie still, attuned, part of the listening silence. The candle, when it lived, was a fragile guardian. Made of tallow, rendered from animal fat, it carried its own scent, faintly greasy, faintly sweet. It smoked if the wick bent, it sputtered if the draught intruded. One candle might last an hour, perhaps two, before diminishing to a puddle. To burn another meant sacrifice, a cost in labor and resource. So darkness was accepted, even welcomed. It was the natural conclusion of day. And in that darkness, rest deepened. The body knows the absence of light. It listens to the circadian rhythm, an ancient clock written in cells. Darkness signals the release of melatonin, a hormone like a lullaby, telling muscles to soften, telling eyelids to grow heavy. Without candles, without lamps, night stretched longer, sleep came earlier, dreams lingered deeper. This was the rhythm of the earth itself. Light for waking, dark for resting. You shift beneath the rough wool blanket, feeling its weight against your chest, the prick of fibers on your skin. Around you, the room is filled with slow breathing. Someone coughs faintly, a child stirs, then all settles again. Time seems to blur, no longer measured by ticking clocks but by the distance between breaths, by the space between one story and the next. Occasionally, a spark glimmers from the hearth, an ember breaking into brief orange life before fading. Your eyes catch it, hold it, treasure it. Light becomes precious when it is rare, a miracle contained in a single glowing coal. You think of the wood cut in the forest, the hours of labor that led to this ember's warmth. Even the smallest flame holds within it the weight of effort, the gift of survival. Outside, the world is hushed beneath snow. No footsteps sound, no carts roll, no bells ring. Only the wind moves, carrying flakes that whisper against the shutters. Darkness outside mirrors darkness within, both pressing gently, enclosing the village in its winter grasp. Yet within this stillness lies safety. Predators lurk, but doors are bolted. Storms rage, but walls hold. In the absence of light, community itself becomes the lantern. Sometimes when sleep hesitates, voices wander into song. A lullaby rises, soft and steady, carrying notes like a slow river. Music has no need for flame. It lives in air, in vibration, in memory. The song soothes restless children, but it soothes you too. The melody drifts in the dark, wrapping around you like another blanket, guiding your mind toward drifting. You realize how different night feels without candle. In the modern world, lights blaze long after dusk, pushing away shadows with ease. But here, with only darkness, you feel its depth. You feel how it asks you to surrender, to let go of sight, to trust the other senses. You feel its invitation to slow, to breathe, to rest. As hours pass, the mind begins to blur dream and waking. Shadows shift, shapes seem to move. Imagination paints its own images. A bundle of straw becomes a crouching figure. A hanging cloak becomes a face. Fear stirs at the edges, but then you remember the stories. Spirits perhaps, but also saints, protectors. The mind populates darkness with meaning, refusing to leave it empty. The science of sleep begins here. Brain waves slow, muscles loosen, heart rate drifts downward. You enter the first stages of slumber, floating between thought and dream. The darkness assists you, pulling gently, holding you close. And still the house stands, beams creaking softly, thatch whispering in the wind. Life continues quietly, hidden in shadow. When moonlight finally appears, slipping between clouds, it feels like a blessing. A faint silver washes the shutters, dusting the floor in pale glow. You glimpse your breath in its sheen, the faint gleam of frost at the edges of the frame. Even the smallest illumination transforms the space, carving shapes from shadow, showing you the world again. Yet soon, the moon passes, and the darkness deepens once more. You close your eyes and realize darkness itself is not empty. It is full of sound, of story, of breath, of dream. It holds the labor of the day in rest. It holds the promise of morning in silence. Without candle, you are returned to the rhythm of earth itself, unbroken, ancient, steady. The silence folds, deeper, unfinished, unbroken. Shadows breathe where the flame once lived. And in that hush, a new rhythm stirs. The rhythm of beasts shifting in the byre, warm against the cold. The hall glows for a moment. Fire leaps high, shadows scatter across beams, and laughter swells like a tide. You sit among others at the long table, the air thick with heat and the scent of roasted meat. Grease drips onto trencher bread. Candles gutter in their pools of tallow, and mugs of ale clink against each other in clumsy celebration. This is a night of plenty, rare, almost strange against the backdrop of hunger. The salted meat has been cut from winter stores, carried into the warmth, placed over flame, fat pops and smokes, the scent clinging to wool and hair. Your mouth waters before the food even touches your tongue. Hunger sharpens every sense, turning simple fare into a feast worthy of memory. You tear bread with cold, stiffened fingers. The crust cracks. The inside is dense, coarse with rye and barley. You dip it into the juices running across the wooden board. Each bite is slow, each mouthful treasured. Hunger makes every crumb sacred. Around you, voices rise. A song begins, uneven at first, then gathering strength. A chorus of rough voices, shaped by labor, worn by weather, lifts into the rafters. Feet stamp on packed earth. Hands drum on tabletops. Rhythm grows, and for a while the cold outside the hall feels far away. Held at bay by fire and fellowship, the science of hunger and feast is written in the body. When you have little, every cell becomes cautious. The stomach contracts, sending signals of ache. The liver releases its stored sugar, eking out energy. Hormones whisper urgency, seek food, seek warmth. Then, when food arrives, the body rejoices. Taste buds awaken, dopamine flows. Even the simplest broth or crumb carries the brilliance of reward. Evolution has woven this into you. Scarcity sharpens the pleasure of eating, makes survival feel like joy. Ale warms your chest. It is thick, cloudy, more grain than clarity, but it soothes. The alcohol spreads, loosening muscles, softening thought, making song easier. You feel the communal glow, warmth not only from fire, but from shared presence. In the darkness of winter, feasts are not just about food. They are about reminding one another. We endure together, yet the shadow of famine lingers. For every night of salted meat, there are many nights of broth thin as water, of bread stretched with husks, of turnips boiled until their flavor dissolves. The memory of hunger is never far, even in the middle of plenty. You feel it in the way. People eat quickly, hungrily, as though uncertain if the next piece will come. You see it in the eyes of children, bright with delight yet still cautious, still clinging to their crust. The hall carries more than scent. It carries history. You think of harvest months ago, when grain was gathered into sacks, when meat was salted and hung, when barrels were sealed. Every piece of food here is the echo of earlier labor, of summer's, sun and autumn's hands. Nothing arrives by accident. Every mouthful is a thread back through the seasons, through sweat and toil and soil. A song grows louder, clapping hands striking rhythm. Someone leaps to their feet, stomping boots against the earth floor. Laughter erupts, filling the rafters, spilling into corners. For a moment, joy feels fierce, like fire pushing back against frost. You sense the ancient power of music, its ability to bind hearts, to banish fear, to remind the weary body of life's brightness. The science of celebration is simple. Voices rise together, and the brain responds. Endorphins pulse, oxytocin flows, the same chemical that strengthens bonds between mother and child. In song, in rhythm, in laughter, the village becomes one body, one voice. Even hunger cannot dissolve this bond. In joy, survival is easier. You watch the fat dripping into the fire, the sparks leaping upward, the smoke carrying a sweetness that clings to rafters. You wonder how long it will be until such feasting returns. Days, weeks, perhaps months if the stores last. Perhaps longer if famine arrives, if rats find the sacks, if weather turns cruel. The joy of tonight is tempered with the knowledge that it cannot last. And yet, precisely because it cannot last, it becomes luminous. It carves itself into memory like light on dark water. You will recall the warmth of the mug, the sound of stamping boots, the sharp salt of meat on your tongue. These moments are kept like treasures, carried forward into leaner days. Outside the hall, snow thickens. The wind presses against wooden walls, the cold gnaws at shuttered windows. But here, inside, the cold is held back by fire, by bodies, by song. The feast becomes its own kind of fortress, fragile but radiant. Children doze against their mothers' laps, lulled by the noise, their bellies full. Dogs curl in corners, twitching in dream, ears pricking to the music. A few voices falter, heads leaning onto folded arms, the weight of food and ale pulling them downward. But the fire still burns, the song still rises, and you remain awake, watching. There is beauty in contrast. Feast only matters when famine exists. Without hunger, food loses its sharpness. Without scarcity, joy dulls. Nature balances abundance and absence, shaping resilience in those who live it. You begin to understand how life in this world is carved not by comfort, but by endurance, by the steady rhythm of feast and famine, like waves pulling forward and back. The hall begins to quiet, plates empty. The last ale is drained. A final song trails into silence, voices fading into whispers. The fire lowers, embers glowing red, shadows thickening once again. You feel the warmth linger in your chest, but already hunger stirs faintly at the edges of thought, reminding you of tomorrow. The feast is memory now. Famine will return. Between them, life continues, fragile and unbroken. The echo of song fades into silence. The hall grows dim, its warmth dissolving into cold. Tomorrow's hunger waits, quiet, inevitable. And in that space between fullness and emptiness, you step once more into the snow. The night is vast. You lie upon straw, the weight of a woolen blanket pressed against your chest. Breath moves in and out, a faint cloud in the cold air, rising and fading in the dimness. The fire has burned down to embers. Its glow is soft, red and low, more memory than flame. Shadows stretch across timber beams, long and slow, then disappear into corners. This is winter's heart, the longest night. Time feels altered here. Hours do not march forward, but pool around you, heavy and unmoving. You count them in silence, not by bells or candles, but by the rhythm of your own body, the beats of your heart, the swell and fall of your breath. The mind wanders, searching for dawn, but the horizon does not brighten. It drifts further, as though the world itself sleeps. Frost gathers on the inside of the shutters, delicate white lace growing silently across wood and glass. Each pattern is unique, a crystalline script written by the cold. The science of frost is simple, yet wondrous. Water vapor in the air touches surfaces chilled below freezing, and molecules align, locking into hexagons, spreading outward in fractal geometry. But here, in the dark, it feels like the hand of winter painting flowers no one can touch. You roll slightly, the straw beneath you rustling. The room is filled with small sounds, the creak of beams in the cold, the occasional drip of thawing, ice near the hearth, the steady breathing of those who sleep beside you. Even the animals in their corner stir softly, their warmth a reminder that life endures even in silence. The body changes in nights like this. With little light, the pineal gland deep in your brain releases melatonin, the hormone of sleep. Your eyelids grow heavy, your muscles loosen, thought drifts. But then, perhaps too much melatonin pools, and you wake again, restless. It is common in winter, in centuries past, to sleep in two halves, what some call first sleep and second sleep. Between them lies a watchful waking, hours of quiet thought, prayer or story. You are awake in that in-between time, not restless exactly, but caught in the stillness. Outside, snow lies heavy across the fields. The world is muffled. Even sound itself seems to sleep beneath the blanket of white. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the faint hiss of flakes settling, the soft sigh of air moving through branches. Snow absorbs vibration, dulling every footstep, every crack of wood. The longest night is also the quietest, a silence, deep enough to press gently against your skin. You think of time differently here. In daylight, it is counted by the sun, by the work of the body, by the rise and fall of tasks. In night, in winter, time is counted by endurance. How many breaths until the light returns? How many hours until the frost loosens its grip? The night feels endless, not because it truly is, but because the mind measures it by longing, for warmth, for brightness, for the soft return of day. Stories help. In the dark, voices rise softly. Tales are told, not from books, but from memory. Myths of saints, of spirits, of creatures who walk beneath the snow. Stories carry warmth when fire cannot. They stitch minds together, easing the weight of the hours. Tonight, though, voices are hushed. Most are asleep. You lie awake alone with thought. The body cools in darkness. Core temperature drops by a degree or two, slowing the metabolism, conserving fuel. You pull the blanket tighter, curling inward, making yourself smaller, more compact, as animals do in burrows. You think of hibernation, bears deep in there, caves, bats hanging in clusters, hedgehogs curled into nests of leaves. They surrender fully to winter, their bodies slowing until heartbeat and breath are barely there. Humans cannot hibernate, but in the longest night, you understand the wish for it, to sleep through hunger, through frost, to wake only when spring returns. You close your eyes, listening to your own breath, in and out, slow and steady. The mind begins to drift into half dreams. Images rise, fields green with spring, bread warm from an oven, the laughter of children running in sunlight. The science of dreams is woven from the threads of memory, stitched together during sleep, rehearsed and remade. Even in this cold room, your mind creates warmth, as though offering comfort to itself. Hours pass, though you do not feel them. The darkness is unbroken, the fire dimmer now, the embers beginning to fade. You stir them gently, coaxing a faint glow back to life, enough to chase away the fear of total blackness. Light, even the smallest spark, feels like safety. Your eyes rest on it, and you feel calmer. This too is written in biology. Humans are drawn to flame, to warmth, to the security of light in the night. Evolution carried it forward, teaching you that fire means survival. The night lengthens further. At times it feels as if it will never end. Yet, if you listen closely, you hear subtle shifts. A rooster far away, confused by some hint of change. The creak of wood as frost loosens its hold. Perhaps the faintest paling of the horizon, though you cannot yet see it. The world is not static. Even in its stillness, it moves forward, slowly, quietly. You remain awake, lying in darkness, half dreaming, half waiting. The longest night is not only measured in hours, it is measured in patience, in endurance, in trust that the world will turn again toward the sun. And so you breathe, steady, unhurried. You count each breath as both an anchor and a lantern, guiding you through the endless dark. The embers fade, the frost thickens, and the horizon waits. The longest night holds you in its hush, and beyond it, unseen but certain, lies the slow return of light. The straw whispers when you shift. Each stem is dry, hollow, brittle, yet together they make a bed. Rustling beneath your weight, they cradle you with a rough kind of gentleness. You feel the unevenness against your back, the itch of fibers along your skin, but after a day of labor, even this is comfort. The air is filled with the mingling scents of hay, of wood smoke clinging to wool, of the faint musk of animals breathing nearby. It is the scent of life held together through winters. Silence. You sink deeper, letting the body's heaviness rest. Around you, others are already still. The family press close, children curled against their mother's side, a brother snoring faintly, the animals shifting in their corner of the room. Breath rises and falls in quiet rhythm, the room held, together by the shared chorus of lungs at rest. Sleep comes slowly in winter. The body resists at first, chilled by the night air, stiffened by long hours of labor. But warmth gathers gradually, layered beneath blankets, shared through nearness, drawn from the very act of lying still. Your heartbeat softens, your breath slows, and you cross the threshold between waking and dream. Dreams begin quietly. They do not arrive all at once, but seep in like mist. Images form first from the day just lived, the sound of an axe against wood, the sight of snow drifting past the church steeple, the smell of broth still clinging to your hands. These fragments replay, then blur, then transform. A field that was frozen becomes suddenly green. A face you saw in the village shifts into another, familiar and strange at once. Science whispers beneath these illusions. Dreams are the mind's, weaving, stitched from memory and feeling. In sleep, the brain does not rest entirely. It works in secret, sorting, storing, repairing. Neurons fire in strange patterns, connecting images that never touched in waking hours. A shepherd's voice becomes your father's. A frozen path leads suddenly to a summer meadow. Reality is folded and refolded until it no longer holds edges. You turn slightly, the straw rustling. In the dream, you walk through fields of gold, though outside the window snow lies heavy. You taste warm bread, though your stomach still holds only broth. The mind does not ask permission to create, it gives what the body longs for. Dream is both memory and medicine, making warmth from scraps, weaving hope from hunger. There are different depths of this journey. At first, you hover in light sleep, where sounds from the room still reach you, the shifting of animals, the whistle of wind through the eaves. Then, gradually, you fall deeper into cycles of slumber. Modern words call them stages, light, deep, and the curious one named REM, when eyes flicker behind closed lids and the brain blazes with activity. But here, in this thatched room, there is no need for labels. There is only the feeling of sinking deeper, of being carried. In deep sleep, the body repairs. Cells knit themselves back together, muscles heal from strain, the immune system strengthens its guard against illness. It is winter's hidden work, the unseen labor that happens only in stillness. While you lie upon straw, your very blood carries out quiet tasks of survival. To rest is to rebuild. And then comes the strange theater of dream. Colors bloom behind your eyelids. Voices speak in tones both known and unknown. You might find yourself at a feast, tables heavy with food. Though you know such bounty is rare, you might walk beneath summer skies, even as frost coats the window shutters. The brain plays with possibility, stitching together fragments of longing and memory. Dreams are not lies. They are rehearsals, practice for futures that may never arrive. They prepare you, soothe you, remind you of what could be. Sometimes dreams carry fear. Shadows rise from memory, wolves at the edge of the forest, storms that threaten the roof. These too serve a purpose, the rehearsal of danger. In the safety of sleep, your mind walks through fear, learns its shape so that waking life may face it with steadier breath. Nightmares are difficult, yet even they are part of the brain's hidden weaving. You shift again, the blanket pulling tighter. The straw rustles, the fire gives one last sigh of ember. Around you, others breathe in unison. Their dreams too unfold, each mind wandering its own quiet landscape. A child might dream of play, of sun, of laughter. An elder might dream of those long-gone faces remembered in youth. Dreams are intimate, yet they fill the room like an invisible chorus, everyone traveling inward together. You dream of walking a frozen path, but this time the snow glitters like stars, and the air is not cold but filled with music. You dream of bells ringing, of light spilling through church windows brighter than any you've seen. You dream of spring, of warmth, of green leaves unfurling, and though the waking world is harsh, the dream world offers reprieve, soft as straw beneath tired bones. In the science of sleep, memory is reshaped here. What you learn today, how to split wood, how to mend a torn cloth, how to endure the hunger of winter is stored, strengthened, laid into the mind more firmly. Dreaming is not only escape, it is also keeping. What matters is preserved. What wounds are carried are softened. The night stretches long. Outside, the snow thickens. Inside, your dreams shift and flow, one dissolving into the next. They rise like breath, then fade like frost when the first touch of dawn appears. Soon, the rooster will crow. The fire will need stirring. The path to the stream will call again. But for now, you remain between worlds, held in straw, wandering in dream. The longest night has passed, and though the cold remains, you have carried a kind of warmth with you, woven not by fire or feast, but by the quiet alchemy of sleep. The dream dissolves. The straw rustles. The ember sighs. Morning waits, pale and unfinished, and in its hush, the body prepares for another day of winter's work. The night breathes its last, soft and unhurried. Dreams fade like mist, leaving only the warmth they carried. The straw beneath you crackles faintly, a reminder of the earth's quiet patience. Outside, frost still holds the world in silence, but within, your body has mended, your spirit has wandered, your mind has stored its treasures. Soon, dawn will pale the window, and another winter's day will call. For now, you rest in the in-between, where night has not quite ended, and morning has not yet begun. A hush, a pause, a waiting breath of time.